Hello, hola, hola a todos. Gracias por estar acompañándonos en este día y por estar pendientes de este evento que es tan importante para nosotros, para la Universidad Iberoamericana. Y estaremos escuchando en estos 2 días, como ya lo empezamos a ver, a expertos de todo el mundo, grandes expertos, hablar del tema del valor del diseño y de por qué es importante difundirlo para el mundo. Muchas gracias, esperamos que nos sigan acompañando durante todo el día y el día de mañana también. Y hoy tenemos una charla buenísima con la directora de diseño estratégico del laboratorio Space 10. Ella es Johanna. Johanna, muchas gracias por aceptar nuestra invitación. Johanna es este despacho, este laboratorio de diseño es un esfuerzo que dedica a explorar los nuevos futuros y ver cómo se pueden lograr a través de estas exploraciones y de estas investigaciones. Se pueden articular mejores soluciones a través del diseño para mejorar la calidad de vida de las personas. Este despacho, Space 10, trabaja exclusivamente para Ikea. Todos conocemos a Ikea. Ikea es una empresa enorme, ahora actualmente ya está en México y bueno, tiene un impacto mundial tremendo, ¿no? Entonces, creo que es muy importante que este tamaño de empresas y corporativos pues estén realmente investigando cómo nos afecta todo lo que es el medio ambiente construido, la tecnología, etcétera, en nuestra vida y cómo podemos hacer o tener una mejor calidad de vida a través de estas exploraciones. Space 10 se dedica exclusivamente a hacer eso. Conduce exploraciones, conduce investigaciones hacia la innovación. Obviamente la carrera de Johanna pues, ha tenido importantes momentos, por ejemplo, trabajando para el MIT, donde ella pues se dedicaba realmente a enlazar y a conectar innovación tecnológica, ingeniería, por ejemplo, y atraer talento a Dinamarca, que es donde están ellos establecidos, para enfocar ciertas soluciones y ciertos esfuerzos a la sustentabilidad. También trabajó o estuvo en el Instituto de Recursos Mundiales, donde estuvo colaborando con diversos gobiernos de Latinoamérica para implementar y financiar también algunos esfuerzos que fueran dirigidos a los compromisos del Convenio de París. Su historial académico viene de economías en desarrollo y de políticas de clima. Pues sin más, en realidad creo que los dejo. Johanna, thank you for being here with us and sharing with us your experience on looking for a better world and looking for a better future. And please share with us your work in Space 10 and your vision or the vision you're working on for a better world. Thank you and welcome.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ariel. And thank you, everyone else. I'm so excited to be here today and speak with you about our work at Space 10. So as Dr. Ariel so kindly introduced, I'm Johanna Fabrin, and I'm speaking with you tonight here in Copenhagen, but I'm hoping that you're enjoying this talk so far. So as Dr. Ariel touched on, Space 10 is a research and design lab on a mission to create a better everyday life for the many people and for the planet. And as he also mentioned in his introduction, is that Space 10 works very closely with Ikea, where our role is to bring an outside-in perspective to qualify new opportunities, inform strategies, build new partnerships, design new solutions, or in other words, our work is not for the Ikea we know today, but for the Ikea we envision for tomorrow. And we at Space 10 work with Ikea because we share this same vision that a better home creates a better everyday life. As I mentioned, we're currently based in Copenhagen as our headquarters. But we do believe that if we're the smartest people in the room, then we're in the wrong room. So we're always looking for excuses to go find smarter people in other rooms. This means that we pop up around the world on occasion to get to be closer to the many people, get new perspectives. So we've been in New York, in London, in Shanghai, and most recently we were in New Delhi, India, where we had a 5-month satellite office, which really allowed us to get to know partners on the ground to better understand people's everyday realities in contexts that are different from our own. Through these pop-ups and throughout all of our work, we work across a breadth of topics from technology to food, architecture, energy. And what all of these projects have in common is that we believe they have a role to play in creating a better everyday life for the many people. We see our projects as either meant to inspire or to enable our community to create change, and as a platform for us to be inspired, enable us to create better solutions. We also see it as an opportunity to stay relevant in an ever-changing world and to evolve instead of just constructing ourselves to last. And through this community, we see ourselves as an interface for innovation, a space where we can surround ourselves with people who are smarter than us, with experts and creatives from multiple fields and from all over the world. Our collaborative approach allows us to work with the best and the brightest talents out there while staying small and quick on our feet. And we work with a wide network of partners and collaborators to look at the world through 3 lenses that we believe shape the everyday life. The first one being societal shifts. The societal changes in the coming decade are complex, from political and economic uncertainty to the global housing crisis, to the climate crisis, rising inequality, increasing lack of resources, et cetera, et cetera. And so we strive to design appropriate responses to these changes and be part of shaping societies that people want to live in. Secondly, we look at environmental shifts. It should be no surprise that we're in the middle of a climate emergency, where we know that this is the last decade for us to make significant change. The climate crisis is at the same time accelerating faster than most scientists anticipated. And so we see our role to explore and design innovative solutions for more self-sustaining and regenerative societies and lifestyle. And then thirdly, we like to look at technological shifts. We can also see at the same time that the pace of technological change is increasingly exponential, which both presents new ethical questions about making us far better equipped to take on the challenges we face. And so we also explore the most promising avenues of emerging technologies while critically questioning who are we becoming when we adopt those. And through all of this chaos, we work our hardest to see the patterns through all of this. And we do that through 2 primary methods. The first, to research new opportunities for a better everyday life. And so together with our network and community and key research partners, we explore some of the major shifts expected to affect people and the planet in the coming decade. And we then translate those research insights into actionable insights that can help us to achieve our mission and ensure that everything that we're communicating with people both balance this playfulness and this insightfulness. In terms of the playful element, we really see play as the purest form of creativity, where the power of play allows us to explore freely, to use our imagination to go beyond the expected and learn hands-on. We also use a playful approach to turn complex ideas into clear, engaging visions. And then at the same time, we like to make sure that our work is also insightful. So it's not just fun, but we also see that the world is not short of data and information, but there's also missing that clear, actionable direction. So we use research as a vantage point to see patterns in the chaos. And we live for those moments of discovery that enable us to close the gap between where we are today and where we want to be tomorrow. The second part of our method is design. So we design new solutions for and with people and the planet. And we work to create lasting change by designing bold, visionary solutions that Ikea can make accessible for the many. We hope that we can shape tomorrow's life at home for the better. And in recognition throughout all of our work of the relationship between happy and healthy people and a healthy planet, we look at this symbiosis. And we like to think that our solutions are not designed for the elite or a handful of a few lucky people, but they're for everyone around the world. And to meet these diverse needs and dreams, our designs have to be inclusive, affordable, and accessible. And we do this by leveraging digital technologies as an enabler for people to live a healthy, sustainable, and happy life. At the same time, we only have one planet, so business as usual is not an option for us. We need to enable regenerative and self-sustaining societies, which is why Space 10 designs for regeneration. And not only will regenerative solutions lead to new opportunities for jobs and economic growth, they will also drastically reduce our environmental impact and make us less vulnerable to the effects of the climate crisis. So through these methods, we strive to build and inspire a global research and design community who can also be with us on the journey to actively pursue our mission. And together with our community and with our network of partners and collaborators, we're exploring what we consider the greatest design or creative challenge of today, which is how do we meet the needs of all the people within the means of the planet? For some, the answer has been human-centered design. It's actually become quite dogmatic in the design field, focus on the user and all else will follow, to the extent that it's almost ingrained in the minds of young designers and students. But have we ever stopped to reflect and properly critique this framework? It's a very quick Google search for human-centered design, and these are some of the results that might pop up. But for everyone who works within design, we know that it can't be codified, or at least we don't believe it should be. But here's the problem. We've overextended ourselves, and in the pursuit of frictionless experiences, we've prioritized usability over everything else. And this includes our health, where we think we've solved the problem of usability so well that we've actually designed ourselves into addiction to technology, for example. Using the lens of people, how has human-centered design hurt us there? Well, consider that the average person in the United States interacts with their smartphone over 2,600 times per day. From a societal point of view, human-centered design has eroded things as critical as our democracy and autonomy. While the mantra of move fast and break things might have worked during the garage era of startups, this doesn't work when you're moving towards positive societal change. And finally, how has human-centered design acted detrimentally to our planet? Just as one example, to date, Keurig has put roughly 60 billion plastic coffee pods into our landfills. And even when we do design for people, it's not for all people. Just think about the iPhone. They keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger. But for me, it's a huge phone in my hand. At the same time, when we think about designing safety for cars, test dummies are usually a very specific type of profile. And thirdly, even when it comes to something as critical as our health and drugs, not all trials are representative of the population. They're usually based on a very specific group of people who are considered homogeneous and easy to test on. So who is this person that everyone is designing for? He's called reference man. So this is the framework for design where he is usually the one that is being used when making all these design choices. Thinking about someone who's 20 to 30 years of age, weighs approximately 70 kilos, is 170 centimeters in height, and lives in a climate with an average temperature of 10 to 20 degrees Celsius. And he's typically Caucasian and has Western European or North American habits and customs. So by now, it should be pretty clear that human-centered design is not going according to plan. But proposing the end of human-centered design shouldn't be despair for the design world. Despair really is the state we fall into when our imagination fails. When we have no stories that describe the present and guide the future, hope evaporates. Failure is, in essence, a failure of the imagination. So today, I'd like to share 2 case studies of our work at Space 10 and some of the lessons that we've learned about circularity, business, and the power of imagining the future that goes beyond human-centered design, but considers the needs of people, planet, and society. and also how these have been applied in an Ikea context. So starting with our first case study today, we've been really interested in the questions of resources and their impending scarcity, particularly when it comes to water. So a few years ago, we started investigating how we can use water more sustainably. And first we thought, in our personal experiences, we feel like we use water a ton in the shower. But it didn't take a lot of research to see that the real opportunity to save water is actually in our food. When we think about the beef-based hamburger, it takes up 2,400 liters of water. And so this is back to some of the chaos where at first we think that there's a breadth of problems and there's all sorts of avenues we can go down, but we narrowed down in on this one pattern that kept popping up in our research in terms of the expected increase in demand for food over the next 3 decades, as well as the increasing presence of agriculture, massive food production, and land use change that has a huge emission impact on our environment. And then at the same time, thinking about the context in which we work so closely with Ikea, we wanted to take a look at the classic Ikea meatball, the Swedish meatball, usually made of some combination of pork and beef, both extremely emission-heavy foods. And we decided to flip the idea on its head and to reflect on the future we wanted to see. If we wanted to see a future where we ate more sustainably, if we ate more regeneratively, what would those foods look like? And by using something familiar to the average Ikea customer, we asked ourselves how we can present the new future by tweaking it slightly. So instead of a future where we're eating meat, we're eating plant-based. Or in some cases, we're thinking about new protein sources such as bugs. But we didn't just want to stop at beautiful renders and ideas of what these recipes could be. We wanted to actually understand if people would eat these. So we started with ourselves. And in our test kitchen, we tested these recipes and we started serving it to our friends, to our community, to start building momentum and input on whether people like these foods or not. And at least we realized that these foods actually taste really good. They were actually meals that we wanted to eat, that our community wanted to eat. So how do we take it to the next level? Instead of just using sustainable ingredients, we also wanted to figure out how we could grow our own. So this led to an additional research project looking into hydroponics, where this is actually the basement of our office where we started growing food here in the office. And we started creating different types of meals that were based primarily on what we could grow here in our office in the meatpacking district in Copenhagen, but also locally produced nearby. And again, we reached the conclusion of these were the meals that we really enjoyed and we really wanted to eat. But at the same time, those of us sitting here in Copenhagen are probably also not the people who need convincing to eat more sustainably. So we decided to take this idea outside our 4 walls. And arguably London is not so drastically different from Copenhagen, but again, it's always refreshing to get new perspectives. And so we asked people whether they could see themselves buying salads and other dishes using ingredients that were primarily produced on site. And it turns out, yes, they can. Because really for your average consumer, the important piece is that it's desirable, that it tastes good, and that it's also available at an affordable price. So after salads, after burgers, we kept going. What more can we reimagine as future foods, foods that are part of a sustainable, circular, regenerative future that we want to live in? So we started looking at hot dogs, and this is just one example of many dishes that we kept imagining, testing, trying, until we realized that we needed to make a cookbook, because it wasn't enough to just say that these were foods that could be produced in our kitchen with a professional chef or at restaurants for people to purchase. But if we really wanted large scale change, we also needed to think about how to simplify these recipes and make them easily available for the everyday person to integrate into their diet. And as I mentioned, this resulted in a cookbook. But if we reflect back on where we started with thinking we were going to design a more water efficient shower head. And then what we ended up doing was taking this whole portfolio of ideas on more sustainable food options and working with Ikea on how to envision that Ikea could integrate these into their restaurant chains, which are the 7th largest in the world. And as a result of a lot of the momentum and desirability around these products and solutions, Ikea now offers significantly more vegetarian and vegan options in their restaurants, as well as hydroponic sourced salads in a lot of their locations, and has been working on making their supply chain for food even more sustainable and regenerative. So what did we learn from this case study? Finding the right problem is more important than starting with the right solution. So if we dive into our second case study, this is a project we worked on called Circle. And we started with similar challenges and contexts, thinking about unsustainable consumption, resource scarcity, and the climate crisis. And we also thought about trends that we were experiencing in Northern Europe at the time, and now have been experienced at a much more global scale, in thinking about the different ways that we're working. For office workers, this means significant changes in how much we're physically at an office, what it feels like when we're here, who else is here or isn't here, and how we set up our furniture. At the same time, we saw a small trend that's now becoming even more prominent, which is consumers thinking about how they purchase things and what they want to buy and what kind of relationship they want with businesses. So instead of wanting specific products, younger generations are looking more to have their problem solved. And whether that's a product or a service, whether that's ownership or access, they tend to lean more towards access. And so looking at these 3 layers and these 3 trends, we came up with Circle, which is a digital design solution that enables small businesses to experience and explore tailored design spaces in mixed reality, while also accessing the Ikea business range through a circular rental model. In other words, it was an Ikea-based office furniture subscription model. So as part of this, we designed a digital interface where people could go in and customize the furniture needs for their office. And depending on the size of their team or space, the functions they wanted, whether it was a conference room or a lunch area, they could make those selections. And they could also go into detail around what type of environment they wanted to create, whether it be productivity focused or relaxation or teamwork. In using the Ikea range of furniture, we could also allow people to get inspired by pre-made room sets that spoke to different aesthetics and feels, very much like the Ikea catalog. And to add even more value to the potential consumer, we also layered AI technology to show personalized recommendations and act as an interior designer for your office space, while still giving people the opportunity to choose different colors, materials, and swap out individual pieces. So all of this was not just imagined as a digital experience, but also as a physical experience that could complement other purchasing journeys at Ikea and allow people to touch and feel their potential office. But if we just take a quick break here and pause and reflect, it's important to mention that this entire idea, this entire concept was really just an idea. It was how we imagined we would want to buy office furniture for our office. It was a vision with renders and very initial prototypes that painted the image of what it could mean to switch from ownership to access to a more sustainable future, to rethinking furniture as a consumable, but furniture as a service. And so this vision of the future that we imagined, this was something that we shared with Ikea, and it was a vision that they shared as well. And so we worked together to figure out how this could become more than just renders or a concept, but reality, which today is called NorNorm. So NorNorm is a third-party venture. It's an independent company that's invested in by Ikea. So hopefully everyone could hear the sound, otherwise it's not as interesting a video. But Nornorm is a company that is still in a startup scale-up phase here in Copenhagen, but hopefully we can see more companies like it around the world that are moving from office furniture as a consumable to as a service. But luckily for us, the people at Nornorm are smarter than we are here at Space 10, and they've really been able to crack another layer to the circular business model, so that Nornorm isn't just a value proposition around sustainability, but in the context of Nornorm, which works between businesses, it allows businesses a kind of flexibility and speed in their physical space that matches the fast pace that businesses need to operate at today to continue to be relevant and competitive. In other words, it reflects that change of how businesses interact with their customers and however they are defined. It changes the focus from providing a possible solution to solving the problem, from moving from individual transactions to ongoing relationships. So lesson 2 from this case study is that this new dynamic that reflects a circular economy that we want to live in is not just a slightly tweaked version of the economy we live in today, but it's actually about rethinking the entire system, placing value in new exchanges between businesses and consumers. So to sum up what we've talked about so far, we should question ourselves constantly if we're looking at the right problem. Personally, I always like to ask myself if we're looking at individuals or a systemic level. Secondly, we must rethink what we consider economic activity and where we place economic value, hopefully towards people, towards the planet, towards a healthy society. And some other lessons that we've learned along the way that I haven't been able to dive into today is, one, we don't have to reinvent the wheel if we work together. We've seen that there are many solutions that already exist out in the world that have been working for generations. And so if we step back and put ourselves in a humbling position, we should be able to see this more clearly and see that there isn't a silver bullet that we should be waiting for more inclusive, sustainable, circular futures, but that the solutions are right in front of us. As I mentioned, we should also recognize that the responsibility really does sit at a systemic level, and the burden of making the right choice shouldn't sit with individuals. So it's also important to think about that in our design. And finally, we should already be thinking about our next ambition beyond circularity, thinking beyond sustainability, because we're not in a system we want to sustain, but thinking about regeneration, about rehealing for people and planet and the society. So with that said, and with that being past work, now we're looking towards the future as space-time. And our ambition for this next year is to figure out how we can define a new design methodology for ourselves. How can we move beyond human-centered design? How can we move beyond just circularity towards something that is more inclusive, representative, and regenerative? And we're extremely interested in exploring new design approaches that are good for both people and the planet, which is in part also why we're so incredibly inspired by the design community in Mexico City. And this means that Space 10 will be heading to you next spring to collaborate, share, and learn with the local community. Heading to Mexico gives us an opportunity to be on the ground and interact with different perspectives and new voices that can help anchor real solutions closer to real people. So we look forward to sharing more information with you very soon, but needless to say, we're so excited to explore Mexico City in more depth next year. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Johanna. It's really interesting what you're doing. I don't know if we have some questions from the audience. Well, meanwhile, I have one question for you, Johanna. What's the difference between the classical idea of design thinking on human-centered design, where looks also for reframing or trying to find the real problem? Because one of the main stages of design thinking is really to try to reframe the problem, think about all the problem scope in general, and really try to understand where the causes and the main problem is, rather than what is over the surface. And this has been a long idea for many years on design thinking. What would be the difference between this classical and old idea of design thinking and your approach, or the approach of Space 10?
That's a great question. And I think there's definitely a ton of value in human-centered design and the direction it's pushed the design community to really focus on problems, as you so mentioned, and think about the causes and the core of issues in a much more strategic way. I think our challenge towards human-centered design is that it really only puts people, and in a lot of cases, one specific type of person, at the center. So it's really about changing the context and the lens of which we're designing in, so that people, also women, people of color, of different diverse ability, are also included in how we're designing solutions, as well as the planet and a societal level. So we're not just thinking about, as I mentioned, that one reference man. And so we're designing solutions that are more universally relevant. So it's, in some ways, it's taking design thinking a little bit further, particularly in acknowledgement of the damage humans have done to the climate.
Okay, thank you. And I have another question. I think many of the projects that I've seen of Space 10, which, by the way, is you have a beautiful web page, and everybody can see all the projects in the web page. Some of the projects make visible what is hidden. Our usual, our daily life, our habits, and our normal activities produce or have a huge impact in the climate, and some of the projects focus on make visible that. Is there a research on the impact of these projects on how, to what extent the human behavior is changed, where you made visible hidden things?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I hear that you're asking specifically in the climate context, but the idea that, or the project example that comes to mind is one that we worked on. I'm trying to remember what it was called, but the core of the project was thinking about what kind of ethics do we want, for example, AI systems or smart speakers to have, and really being interactive, and having an online platform that we try to make as extremely accessible around the world for people to test and converse with different AI systems and give their input and feedback on what they think an AI system should be, whether it needs a specific gender, whether it needs a certain tone of voice, whether it has certain personality characteristics. And we've done similar projects in shared living, thinking about starting to question things that we may take for granted. So what does shared living mean to different people around the world, whether it's different sizes, different makeups of demographics, etc. So we always love to do projects like that are really involving other people and getting that qualitative understanding of where our design should go and what questions we need to be asking.
Thank you. You just mentioned, are we going to be looking more and more services? Because when we think about Ikea or this company, we think about furniture, houseware, or physical things, right? Are we going to be looking in the near future like more services offered by IKEA or something like that instead of selling products?
That's a fantastic question. And again, I think it's important to emphasize that we sit externally from IKEA, and we're also looking very future forward thinking. So thinking a 5 to 10 year horizon. But that's definitely a trend that we see across retail, that companies are starting to imagine how can they go from just individual transactions where they're selling physical products, but how they establish an ongoing relationship through subscriptions or other repair, take back services, et cetera, and really develop a lasting relationship with customers while at the same time leveraging the advantages to the environment of lowering their material impact.
Wonderful. Another thing, we have a big audience of students on design, specifically student design. What would be your suggestions for the students to become a better designers for the next future? Thinking on your profile that you come from the economic discipline, what would you recommend to the students?
That's a great question. And as you mentioned, I don't come from a design or creative formal academic training. My experience is in large academic institutions or governments. Mm-hmm. And I would say to design students that there is so much value to design and design thinking that it shouldn't be isolated in a creative context, but that students should really take the education that they receive and explore other fields to see how much value they can add from a design element, but also to gain those other perspectives, to understand what people in government, for example, might be thinking about, how they make decisions, and then really see how design can be a powerful tool for change if we start thinking about it as a tool set instead of a field.
Oh, wonderful. Great. And for Space 10, is Space 10 collaborating with universities?
We do. We have something called a residency program where we invite students or other professionals to come work with us in Space 10, typically within a specific context, but also with the opportunity to further their own ideas. And we really love having residents here physically in the Space 10 space, but also digitally online as new perspectives from around the world that can really inspire and challenge us. And hopefully we can also give something back.
Wonderful, this is great. If some student wants to collaborate with Space 10, what does she or he must do in order to collaborate with Space 10?
That's a great question. We're always looking for new partners and collaborators to work with in our projects. But specifically when it comes to the residency program, we're hoping to make an announcement later this fall about a residency starting in the spring or starting early in January or February. So that's definitely one way. And we're always listing positions on our website, looking for great talents to come join our team here in Copenhagen or remotely.
Beautiful, wonderful. Johanna, I think if we don't have more questions, On behalf of the Universidad Iberoamericana, we really thank you for sharing with us your work, the work of Space 10. I think you're doing wonderful projects, and we have always believed that design helps to imagine a different world. We help to build a better world, and as you're saying, we should be working together. We should be working interdisciplinary in order to achieve this goal. And but for sure, this is our main job, to imagine a better world, a different world, a new way of doing things, right? So we really thank you for being with us and share with us all your experience, and thank you very much on behalf of the University.
Yeah, thank you so much. It was a pleasure, and we really look forward to learning from the Mexican Mexico City design community next spring.
Thank you.